when we look back at the earliest days, ever since even the inception of NASA in 1958, there's already a lot of mystery and coincidences that follow the founding of NASA. If we look at all the way back to Operation Paperclip in the 1940s and Operation Deep Freeze in the mid 1950s, shortly after these operations and the exploration of Antarctica with Admiral Byrd, all of a sudden NASA's founded, and this whole idea of human travel to space, it starts to come about. And all of a sudden there's an Antarctica Treaty that's put into place in 1959 that says nobody can go beyond the 60th degree latitude and independently explore Antarctica. And then NASA just somehow pops up in the mix of all of this. And ever since then, we've discovered all of these, lies, and they're not being completely transparent and honest with us. And this ranges anywhere from the International Space Station, where they're training astronauts in mock-up, swimming pools with a mock-up model of the ISS, and we can see water bubbles on, quote unquote alleged spacewalks. We can look at the moon landings, with all of the Apollo missions, all of the fakery that we discovered. I mean, even Buzz Aldrin has come out several times, suspiciously saying that, we never went to the moon. And, there's hours and hours of footage that just at this point objectively proves we've never gone to the moon. And, you go back to the ISS, you see all this discrepancies, these visual effects with augmented reality and harnesses and virtual reality, and we see all of these errors that with these live, there's none of the live footage ever actually live, and it's all pre-recorded, and they use chroma screen and green screen, and they do this in Hollywood, and they have all these visual effects that they can, use all these Hollywood effects with ISS. And, you look at all these different issues with these, actronauts, because they're really just actors. They're not actually going to space. And, we look at how it's logistically impossible to even send anybody to space on a international space station. It just doesn't happen for so many reasons. Even with the quote unquote live footage, not just from the U.S. and NASA, but the ESA and JAX and other space stations. There's all these glitches with the live footage. So when you start to look at all of this, why is everything fake? Why is there all these issues? Why is there never any real footage from space? Everything's CGI and cartoons. We can look all the way back to one of the early founding fathers of NASA. The father of human space travel, Wernher von Braun, and even with his founding of NASA and his early days of NASA, it's very suspicious. There's a lot, with Operation Paperclip, there's a lot of mystery surrounding Wernher von Braun and Walt Disney, and them creating these films to promote human space travel back in the early 1950s, in the mid 1950s, when it wasn't really even a thing before then. And then all of a sudden, a couple years later, in 1959 or 58, NASA was created. And he said a lot of suspicious things, Wernher von Braun, that it would take 3 rockets the size of the Empire State Building just to go to the moon, and nothing ever goes to space. But one of the most interesting things is what he put on his tombstone, which is a biblical verse that says, from Psalm 19:1, that says, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork." So if he's saying that the heavens declare the glory of God and the firmament showeth his handiwork, somebody that's supposed to be promoting space travel and saying that we can go to space is saying that, is basically saying that we can't go to space. He's, telling you a biblical verse that's saying that there's a firmament above us that we can't go to space. So that's just, someone from, the early foundings of NASA decades ago that's saying that we literally can't go to space. But now, in recent years, we've even had people, several people from the interior design department, the paint and graphic design departments, the chief engineers, satellite engineers, all these former employees that have all worked for NASA have all recently come out saying that it's true that there is a firmament above us, and the reality of where we live is truly a flat Earth reality. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and get into some of these whistleblower testimonies.
Mike here, glad you could join me. And today I have two special guests. I have David Waverly, formerly NASA employee, and as most of you know, Cindy Holland, also formerly NASA employee. And we're going to talk about, are there satellites? And if there are, what type of satellites? David's going to talk just a little bit about the South Pole because he was stationed there. So he's got a lot of cool information, facts about that. And we're going to talk about Cindy. Of course, she worked at Lockheed Martin, which an engineer told her what?
That the Earth is flat.
The Earth is flat, straight from an engineer at Lockheed Martin. Now, if anybody knows if the Earth's flat, Lockheed would know. So, David, let's hear, what did you do for NASA? And tell us about your experiences. I know you work for Goddard Space Center. Tell us about your experiences at the South Pole.
Yeah. Okay, so I actually wasn't at the South Pole because there isn't a South Pole.
Oh, but, whoa. Is there something to walk on down there? I mean...
First of all, Antarctica, regardless of whether you believe in a globe or a flat Earth with a encircled, encompassed Antarctica, Antarctica is a landmass covered with ice, a whole lot of ice.
How far out did you get to go?
How much ice is there? Anyway, so I don't have a serious face. Sorry, dude. You get. But how far out did I go? I was in McMurdo Station.
Okay, so you're right on the edge, under just directly south of New Zealand, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Everything is south.
Well, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I'm pulling your leg, man. Listen. So look. Okay, it's pretty. You go to Christchurch, New Zealand, on the way to Antarctica to go out to the ice, they call it. So. I was in McMurdo to put a data ingest system. Now, this was in my career at NASA when I believed we lived on the globe Earth. I bought all the science, all the space, the vast universe, and billions of stars. I bought into all that, just like most of us did at one point. And so I'm down there, and we put this system in to capture the data. And it's for polar orbiting spacecraft, so that because there's a big data hole in the Antarctic data set, a big hole.
Are you talking about the map part, the part where Hollow Earthers say there's nothing there?
Yes, any map that you would have seen of the Earth showed this huge gaping lack of data in the center of Antarctica. And I can tell you the reason why that is because there is no center in Antarctica. Antarctica is a ring, but I didn't know that then. So we go down there. Now, here's the thing, and I was about to tell you a little while ago, is I set this system up. Everything's functional. We were ingesting data. We're retransmitting it offline when there are no spacecraft orbiting over, quote unquote. And about 10 years later, I'm watching a YouTube video, and I'm looking at images on Google Earth of Antarctica. And there's a big gaping hole in the data set for Antarctica on Google Earth. And I'm like, now you got to understand, I personally went there to correct that. So I was kind of like a little weirded out. Like, why in the heck is there no data for this large area of Antarctica when I went down there to correct that? And this is here 10, 12 years later. So I called my old boss and said, hey, Mike, what's the deal? How come we don't have any data, any imagery over the center portion of Antarctica? And his answer to me, and I talked to my pastor about this even, because I was like freaking out about it, because it didn't make any sense.
You think after 10 years they'd have some data, right?
Dude, 12 years.
12 years, okay.
Yeah, and we spent $500,000, which isn't a lot of money by NASA standards, but on this project to go down there, I didn't even want to go, to be honest. I was newly married to my wife. I didn't want to leave her for 5 minutes. You know what I'm talking about. So anyway, so I go down. I was lamenting the whole time, you guys. Anyway, so I call Mike and I say, what's the deal with this? And he says, well, Dave, they opted out. They didn't want our data. They got a pipe. They got a fiber optic network from McMurdo to Svalbard. Now, you got to understand, Svalbard is almost the total other side of the world, okay? It's one of the most north places on the quote-unquote planet, okay?
Now, is this an undersea pipe from McMurdo that far?
Yes. Fiber optic pipes under the ocean from McMurdo Station all the way to Svalbard. Now, even on a flat Earth map, it's freaking far, okay?
So wait a minute. Supposedly we have satellites. We have all this great space technology.
Yes.
Why the heck do we need a fiber optic pipe from McMurdo?
Listen, that's what I'm getting at. So he's telling me this, and this is what he's telling. And I'm going, I don't even think I believe that I knew about flat Earth yet then. This is what was leading up to my going, holy crap, we're deceived. So I'm on the phone with him, and he's retired at this point from NASA. I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why the hell? He said, well, they opted out to send the data to Svalbard. That's the Norwegians, okay? And that they would process the data and sell it back to us.
What?
I'm just saying. So I'm like, okay, this doesn't make any sense at all. Now remember, how many guys can you talk to that said, hey, I personally went down there and put it in a data retrieval system for polar orbiting spacecraft in Antarctica? You hear that every day, right?
Well, in the flat Earth community, there's a few.
Yes, I know that.
Yes. So it's important that everybody understand that you were there to map what's essentially still not there and still not mapped today.
Right. To fill out an area of data, a huge area that was not there. And it's still not. See, here's the thing. He says, well, yeah, they pipe it over the fiber optic network to Svalbard, and then they sell it back to us. Well, it's still a big gaping hole in the data. Hello.
So 2017, we have yet to map a portion of one of our continents if the Earth is a globe, correct?
And we supposedly, quote unquote, have continuously polar orbiting spacecraft. Guys, listen. There's a whole series of spacecraft that I worked on also, called EOS, Earth Observation Systems. And it was like 5 different spacecraft, and they each looked at different spectrum. One was for atmospheric qualities, another was Terra, anyway. They are all polar orbiters because the whole idea is that the Earth is spinning and these daggone satellites go around and they get a different swath of the world as the Earth spins underneath it.
Right, strip data.
Again, I'm speaking. Huh?
That's called strip data, right?
Yeah. And so, okay, and from a global perspective, that makes sense, right? Okay, so how come there's no data still from the southern part of Antarctica?
Well, according to Rob Simmons, and he gave us Russia's, Japan's, and the U.S.'s image servers, the Titan, the MRR-8, and the Epic Discover are all pictures of models taken from ground-based cloud radar, and then they put the model together of Earth. All their image data is fake. It's not a picture of Earth from space. So we know that about those satellites because Rob Simmons, and that's the guy, in case you don't know, folks, it's Photoshop. It has to be. Well, it has to be Photoshop because there are no pictures of Earth. So we know for a fact those images are not from space. They're just images put together by a computer called MyDoll. And so now you're saying you were stationed in Antarctica. Your job was supposedly to map this missing big area. Because NASA, if they show a radar of the South Pole, you see this big gaping round circular hole there of no data of anything mapped. And so your job was to map this out. 12 years later, you come to find out that they mapped nothing. It's still the same today, right?
Correct. Matter of fact, I did some research on my own work and looked it all up because they have what's called mission design reviews. Okay. And Cindy, you probably know about that, right? So
I know. Yeah, we had that in our. Yeah.
And so they would also look at proposals, whether a mission or a project was viable. And it's a lot of work leading up to before you're ever even able to execute any part of a project. And that's how they raise costs, and people have careers for 30 years on one spacecraft project. But anyway, I'm just saying. So I looked it up, and I could find all this work. My boss had gone and campaigned with University of Wisconsin and all these guys, and there was all these project plans and proposals regarding this, so why they were going to spend the money, why we were going to go down there and do that. You could find it. It's out there because I looked it up. I wanted to see what led up to why I went there, And basically, his answer does not give an answer because it doesn't make any sense. He didn't answer the fact that there's a big gaping hole in the data still.
In other words, nothing mapped. That's what we call a gaping hole in the data. There's nothing mapped.
There's a map of Antarctica on a globe Earth. I used to have a globe in here for joke purposes. On a globe Earth, anybody that looks at it, you show Antarctica. When you go to Google Earth, and if you zoom in, you'll notice that the lines from data scans, they converge at the middle and they become nothing. It's just white. There's no data. It's kind of filled in, kind of like the guy who made the Earth image, right? It's Photoshop.
It has to be. All right, yeah. Awesome. Now, David, you, Cindy, and I, we were talking about actual what we would call real satellites, not ones orbiting a ball, of course, but real satellites that actually resonate probably on a frequency perfectly in our magnetic field. They have found technologies, and Cindy, you've heard of the TR3, the funny triangle-shaped spacecraft they got. We have aircraft that actually can hover almost indefinitely in tune with our magnetic field. That's what I'm understanding. Cindy, you mentioned a project that you cannot talk about, of course, and we'll respect that. But they are, in most part, what are really satellites, correct? What can you tell us about this, Cindy?
Well, I have not researched that particular aircraft myself, but I can tell you that the research that I've done shows us that the satellites that they claim are orbiting Earth are not orbiting Earth. There are
not flying around the ball, kept in check by gravity by constantly falling and missing the curve, right?
Correct.
Okay.
That are never seen in any photos, by the way.
That's a crazy concept too. That you're spinning around a ball, constantly falling and missing it because you're going 17.
Sci-fi movie.
Yeah, that's a science fiction.
It's a sci-fi movie. It's a really good topic, but in reality, yes, they're building satellites because I have friends who work for these companies who build them. Yes, sir. There are people who build these and work on these programs, and that's not fake. What's fake is that they are being sent into orbit. That's the part that's fake, and so that's the part that we're researching. We're looking into these anomalies because we know that outer space is not factual. It's created. It's not. It's a sci-fi movie. It's not something that's able to be. You can't go there.
Yeah.
It's just
we can't get to the moon. So, Cindy, let me ask you, Cindy, I've talked to NASA engineers, and they claim, well, I work on satellites. Are you saying that somebody who works at NASA could actually work on parts of the equipment that go on things that are actually going up in the air to hover, orbit Earth, or ride along our magnetic field. Because David, you were talking about they find this sweet spot, a resonating frequency, that they have technology that they can stay up there as long as they stay in tune with Earth's magnetic field. Is it possible employees, Cindy, can build these things and they tell them it's an orbital satellite, but still be functional and be used for maybe one of these platform devices?
It's hard to know what they would be used for because we're not in the know. And most of the people who work on these satellites are not in the know. There's no way they would have an idea of where they're being used or how their functionality actually works, but they are building them. I know I have a close friend I grew up with who works at Boeing, and when I first started posting that satellites were fake, she was very upset with me because she built satellites. Well, a lot of us work with people who build or work on satellites. I've worked for NASA. I've worked for the Air Force. I've worked for Lockheed Martin. I've worked for Raytheon. I've worked in other NASA contracting positions, and we're all doing something. We're all working on projects and programs. The problem is it's a need-to-know basis. Everything is need-to-know. You're told what you're told. You do your job. You come to work, and you retire, and that's pretty much it. So most folks would never know that the hard work that they're doing is not what they think it is.
Can I interject on that?
Yeah.
That idea?
Yeah.
Okay. When I was at Goddard, Mike and Cindy, and anybody listening, there's this environment it's a wonderful, almost utopian ideal where you're all doing this great work for the betterment of mankind, and you almost believe this. You really do. And a lot of us at Goddard, it wasn't just a job, it's what we did. I mean, you could sleep there and shower there and shop there. They had a shop, and so they create this environment that's conducive to. Nobody starts going, "Oh, they're keeping secrets from us." I mean, that's so. Anyone listening to this should not think like the people they're kept under a ball and chain, and it's such an utterly amazing work environment that you never stop to think we're doing something bad.
Right.
I mean. You're it's a given. You're doing this wonderful work, and everybody's doing their little portion, and then they launch a spacecraft. Ooh, cool, you know.
And what he's saying is exactly right. The environment is happy, proactive. They teach you, they train you. Everybody's friendly. I mean, for the most part, I was with NASA for 4 years, from 1996 to 2000. My time with NASA was my first actual career position outside of college. I was terrified, but I was so excited. And to meet all those people and to think back to the folks that I've worked with, amazing people. So I don't want anybody who works for these companies or works for the DoD to ever think that I'm putting down NASA employees or Air Force employees or any of them. I still have a love for them, still friends with them. We're all under this blanket of unknown. None of us know the truth. That's what it is. Nobody knows unless you're in the top. I don't know. Probably.
Even the top at NASA, they probably don't know. It's all obscured by fervor and excitement and ideals that most of us were taught since kindergarten.
Right.
Yeah.
If you think about the movies that have come out and the way that it affects the mind, so sci-fi movies, rockets. There's a movie called The Knowing, and they put together a thing. What do you call it? It goes into the ground. It's the I can't think of the title of it, but it's all the kids from 50 years prior drew pictures of what
time capsule.
Thank you, time capsule.
Yeah.
They put in pictures of what they thought, and I thought it was funny that they drew rockets. Who would have thought 50 years prior of rockets unless it was put into our media? There's no other way you'd even think of a rocket unless media portrayed rockets as future. Of course. So I saw I've been watching this movie a lot lately because I pick apart movies as I try to figure out what they're doing next. And so I pick apart Hollywood movies, but The Knowing is a good one because it kind of shows you the direction that they're taking. They're using specific agendas, space absolutely, the globe absolutely, evolution is huge. And so they're taking these things that we've been taught since kindergarten, and they're manipulating people to believe. And these are psychopaths. They don't have guilt. They do not
have feelings.
Correct. They're able to teach these things in schools and in college and all the way up to people who are PhDs. And they know they're false. They know they're fake. There's no proof. It's all theory. But they can do this because it's an agenda, and it goes with their agenda. So,
can I add to that?
Yes.
Okay, this is a scriptural ideal, guys. Is that God says that He will do nothing. Will I do nothing without first telling my servants, the prophets? Mm. Satan or Lucifer or whatever name you want to give him, the serpent, he has these aspirations to be like the Most High. So he also has his servants, the prophets. We call them the media. And so he tells us, they tell us what they're doing through movies, through media, like you're saying, Cindy. So they're laying their game plan or their intent in a whole lot of movies like that. Yeah.
You know, guys, this is very interesting, and I shut my camera off so I get a better stream. But when we talked with Rob Simon, he's very honest. He gave us Russia's, Japan's FTP servers, all their model of Earth that they used to superimpose the images on to make it look like they're taken from outer space. Totally straight up, honest about what map projections you use, and he gave us that website and how to configure the map that they use for different projections and things. When you talk to other NASA certain employees at certain departments, they straight up tell you, oh, no, it's not this and this. And so none of it leads to outer space or living on a spinning ball and traveling 483,000 miles an hour. What it tells me, though, is that it seems like there's a separation between the people doing the work at NASA and a media conglomerate or a other type of government that does the faking part, the part where they take you in on the ISS and fake, weightlessness through the HoloLens technology that JPL is working with right now, or telemetrics. So they've contracted, and that allows them to bring in actors from any place over the world and put them on the same set. It's almost like the stuff that these engineers are building are actually used and put on these platform type what we'll call satellites, just for a better lack of term right now, so they can look at the Earth and get cloud cover and things. They're heavily interested in our magnetic field. We'll probably talk about that in another video. We'll talk about the sun in another video and how the eclipse, nothing blocked the sun. But it almost seems like there's this other type of government thing going on that's sort of separate from NASA. It's like NASA has another division that we would call liars and deceivers, part of NASA. And then we have the people that actually do real work and real technology for NASA. That's what it's looking like. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Again, the mass of people, and they are many, there was between 17,000 and 35,000 at Goddard at any one time throughout the history of Goddard. All of those workers, like Hubble was built in our clean room at Goddard, right? It never enters their mind that what they're doing is going to be for deception. They think that it's for science, for knowledge, for the betterment of mankind, so that we could understand how we were created, right? Which the very thought of that's kind of insane, but anyway.
What do you got to say to that, Cindy?
Can you please repeat what you just said, David?
I said that that just at Goddard alone, there's a lot of people that work for NASA in its entirety that work who are engineers and scientists and other support personnel supporting all of that infrastructure. That at Goddard alone, there was between 17,000 and 35,000 people just working at Goddard.
Okay, so when I was at Dryden, and it's not called Dryden Flight Research Center anymore, they did change the name not too long ago. I don't know what the new name is, but when I worked there from 1996 to 2000, we had to go through Y2K. And because I was an IT support person, I know exactly how many computers there were. I'm going to give you a basis. It was 2,500 computers that I had to fix prior to Y2K, which is, everybody remembers Y2K. If you don't, you need to go research it. But so I can tell you we had approximately 2,500 computers, which equates to approximately 2,500 folks. If I had to guess, based on my experience in those 4 years, as a truther now, and I became very awake in 2009 to most truths, and I became aware of flat Earth in May of 2016. So I have many years as an awake person. When I go back and I think about the photographers who were in the office next to me, who came out of the building and said they couldn't believe people believed in the fake moon landings. That was in 1997, 98. I don't remember the exact date. I just remember it happening. So
wait. NASA employees that are in the know are going, I can't believe these people bought into that moon landing crap.
Oh, guys.
This is what I overheard, yes.
No. You just reminded me of something I mentioned the other day to somebody who was like, a pastor friend of mine. At Goddard, we had a digitization project in the education office. A guy named Dr. Bob DeBreese was the head of education at NASA Goddard. I did a lot of education outreach, but I was also technologically adept, so they would include me in these extra projects. We were going to digitize all the lunar lander and all of the Apollo mission stuff they had in archive, and it was missing. It was gone.
Oh, boy.
Okay? and I remember, but here's the thing. Then I still believed all the other garbage. So I was like, well, it didn't make any sense. How would you lose? I guess the most historic moment in all of mankind. How would you lose that?
You lost all the telemetry data to the most important event ever, right?
Yes, they got like freaking 10 sound bites from the lunar mission,
I'll tell you, I was the retrospect administrator. Retrospect is a system that we used to back up computers for the whole facility. So this is dating myself, obviously, because retrospect I think it's outdated. I don't think anybody uses it now. But if you look in history, you will see that retrospect was the technology, the app, basically. We didn't have Windows. This was a long time ago, so it was different. But we used a system called retrospect to back up computer systems. Now, if I'm understanding my role right as the backup administrator for Dryden Flight Research Center, everything was backed up every night based on my job, what I did. I backed up computers, and it was a system. It did it automatically.
Now, wait, Cindy. Are you backing up like super important data like the moon data, or was the moon data not as important?
And everything that was on
they're personal freaking MP3s.
So we can lose the moon data, but we're backing up everybody that swiped their key card for the last 20 months, right? Yes. Okay, I got it. Just as long as I understand NASA's priorities. Gotcha.
Yes. So we're backing up the work that they do each day to make sure.
But we lost the moon data.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, and this is off topic a little bit, but there's a lot of cancer at Edwards Air Force Base where Dryden Flight Research Center is located. I don't think that's accidental. I don't believe that that's accidental. I believe that there's a reason why they allow so many, I don't know what it is. It's not just chemicals. There's so many things going on at the base, at Edwards Air Force Base, that environmentally are harmful to humans. I don't think that's accidental. I think that the smart people that they hire, they don't want them to remain smart, and they maybe don't even want them to stay in the know. We had an SR-71 pilot who, I think it was 2007, somewhere in there. Anyway, she was an SR-71 pilot, Marta Bonmeyer. She was flying SR-71s for her career, and she died in a small airplane accident in the mid-2000s. So you understand, I have a lot of questions about these so-called weird, strange deaths that happen, whether it's cancer, whether it's an airplane crash, whatever it is. I have a lot of questions. Marta Bonmeyer crashing a plane and dying after flying the SR-71? It's odd.
She's not the only one, though, Cindy. There's YouTube videos about a guy that worked in Antarctic supposedly found out something. It seems like if you're a type of person that they can't trust and you have information that need to know information only, it seems like some of these people are dying mysteriously or disappearing even, right?
Or they're having mental issues that cause them to have to take or to be prescribed, not have to take, but be prescribed drugs that alter their mind to the point that they're practically useless.
Correct.
Yeah, that's a good setup, right? Because, somebody comes clean, like you guys, whistleblowers, and they go, well, they're doing this and this and this. But then all of a sudden you can go back and say, well, we have their mental history here. And they're nuts. Yeah, they're nuts, and they're not really saying the right things. We are taking care of them. We have them on medication, but they're just saying wrong things, and so we can discredit that way also. Yes. And so people are always wondering, well, where are these NASA employees that are saying the Earth is flat? Folks, I got 2 NASA former employees right here on video that know for a fact, from what they learned from NASA and what they've studied out themselves, that the Earth is indeed not a spinning ball. Amen?
Amen.
And I know, Cindy, I know that you got family to tend to right now, and I would like to make some more videos with you guys because...
You're obviously attracting a lot of attention these days with your NASA channel.
Yeah, NASA took out NASA television on the internet.
Mm-hmm. So. And we'd like to know a bit more about you. What's your background? What made you a sudden specialist with the shape of the Earth?
Well, if I tell you it's a certain thing, and without having an instrument to prove it for over 1,000 years, let's say 500, I'll be generous, and there's no instrument or exploration of the surface, but you tell everybody it's that. If you're wrong, are you going to tell everybody?
Good question.
There's a lot riding here. Everybody who's got a degree in physics, the credibility of every university institution over the past 500 years, the concept of Darwinism, evolution, where we're from. If they lie about the shape, everything falls apart. Even the notion of scarcity, especially if there's more real estate, more land, more resources, more oil.
And what about you? Where do you come from?
Your imagination.
Meaning, what's your background, your studies, what...
Self-taught. High realist painter. Started painting at the age of 3. So before my brain was gotten a hold of by curriculums and schools, I was already well on my way in understanding perspective on the horizon line. Like how to draw perspective, three-dimensional reality form. My goal at a very young age was to be able to reproduce paintings that looked like reality, like a camera took it. It's just this weird fetish I've always had since I was very young. When you would look at an image, I would have a photo right next to the image, and I really get off on confusing people whether they could decide. And I'd say, which one's the photo? And I would get off. It's been this freaky fetish. I've always had to watch people's eyes sort of scramble. They would come up closer and I'd be, no, 6 feet. You have to decide from 6 feet. In this case, when it comes to a picture of the Earth from space, not only will no one ever go up in a rocket to check out if it does look like that, but it's more than a distance of 6 feet.
So you were hired by NASA not because of your knowledge in astronomy, just because of your talent at painting?
They enjoyed the way I painted things to make things look real, like my understanding of light. How I could take something that doesn't exist in reality. After a certain point, I surpassed needing photos, and I could basically construct things that don't exist, understanding how light would hit form. And they recruited me after a vernissage, after I graduated from political science intelligence at a Jesuit school in Canada, known as St. Francis Xavier. They recruited me at a university exhibition.
And what was your job like?
Well, in the beginning it was like, we'd like to see some samples of textures and stuff like that, and they started really pushing me into using, different types of spill effects and stuff like that. They already had an idea, like, they seemed to already have this system of textures or ways to make textures. So they asked me to, I guess I was just filling in on somebody else's work, like a predecessor who went into retirement. And once in a while I would get calls from a gentleman who was the head of the graphics department, and he'd ask me to change the color on things or the lighting. And then what they would do is they would send me like a drawing or an architectural drawing of like an instrument that might be scouting the surface of a celestial body, be it a moon or a planet. And then they would ask me to transpose these objects on the textures, and they would give me certain directions of, like, the light is at this angle, this time of the day, at this intensity, and then I would have to make the shadows congruous to the information they would make, and I'd have to make it look real.
And can you explain to us what happened between your steady job that you just described and...
It wasn't steady. It was on and off, and it was freelance.
Okay. And what happened between that period and now? What is the turning point that made you totally dissociate yourself from what you were working for?
Was about a year after I met some of the people I was working with over the phone and on computer at a function. And I think it was kind of like somewhat of an initiation to this division of NASA. And there was one gentleman there that didn't work for NASA, but he was like a consultant for the U.S. Defense Department, GPS, and NASA. And he was a physicist and a painter. Very interesting combination. He was a well-known astrophysicist and a photorealist painter. Most people in the mainstream know him as a well, not even the mainstream, but in the physics circles, know of him as a scientist, but they didn't know he had this knack of photorealistic painting. And it's something they kind of kept under wraps. With me, however, I was, a very good photorealist painter. I would say I was better than him, and I was better at recreating textures that don't exist. And there was a party at somebody's cottage in the Hamptons, and the power went out, and it was about 1 o'clock in the evening, and there was one gentleman who was friends with this guy. He was this consultant for the U.S. Defense Department. Now, this guy was basically a friend of one of my superiors and a colleague. And basically, they started to, I think the conversation started turning around like something about GPS coordinates weren't working or something concerning Antarctica. And then he made a crack. This gentleman was working for them both as a consultant. So it was like, I was like, well, so you should go out there and, just and check this thing out, see if it's still functional. And then somebody made a quip to the effect that, well, if he goes out that far, he ain't coming back. And I asked, like, what do you mean, like, why wouldn't he come back? It's like if he can go back on his because GPS doesn't reach that far. And then I was like, well, why doesn't GPS reach that far? I mean, is it too cold? And it's like, it's because it's flat. And they started laughing. They all started laughing. And my superior had quite a weird smirk on his face. He was watching me to see how I would take all this. And there was no lights on, and they had candles that they just lit. And then basically, he took out some chalk, and it was like a cement sort of plank floor of some sort. And he started drawing out the Earth, all the continents exactly, but how they function, everything, physics, science, how everything we understand in movement of energy and objects in this new or hidden science, hidden from the public, how everything is caused by temperature, as opposed to like this very evasive notion of energy with Einstein and Hawking, that there's 3 ingredients to make a universe: energy, mass, and and space. It was temperature. Temperature was why there's mass and energy.
And you believed him right away?
It made a lot of sense. But he basically started to avert everything. And they were kind of laughing, but they were very, very, they were listening to him. He seemed to be like kind of like this guy who was just this weird, I thought he was some sort of nut that these guys, like he was basically just like picking apart everything that they know or that they say every day in the office. He was basically explaining the flat earth and how it works. And he literally drew the UN flag. And I thought this is a joke on me. This is some sort of initiation to see if I'm stupid or to see if I'm going to buy this. I thought they were fucking playing with me to see if they could convince me it was flat. And what was creepy about the whole thing is that they were more laughing at me for not getting it. It never went back to it being a ball with these gentlemen that night. It might have been that at the office the next day, in front of everybody else, the underlings, but, and then for weeks, I couldn't think, everywhere I went, every time I saw a picture of the Earth, it was like just a logo, it was a painting, it was a graphic. And then I started to scrutinize the actual images of the Earth they claim are photos. And it just started looking silly, like a cartoon. Like, why is the water so blue if it's reflecting the blue atmosphere, but I could still see the brownness of Africa? Like, wouldn't I be seeing Africa through the blue atmosphere? Like, why is the green and the brown of continents so clear with the blue of the water when the water of the oceans is just reflecting the blue atmosphere? And how come the whole thing, being 3 parts water, isn't reflecting the blackness of space? Like, I started seeing all these flaws. And the more and more I tried to prove this guy wrong, or just to find out if they were joking or pulling my leg, the more I realized they weren't joking.
What do you think you were the one that they spoke about? That they told that to? I
think there was some projects coming up down the pipeline. Mars, a few things that they wanted to know. I think the whole thing was to see how I would play ball. Like, let him in on it. He'll ask more questions, and we'll study his reaction. And if he has the proper reaction to maybe be part of the deception, we'll let him in on the next project, the next contracts that we want him to falsify, the next images we need him to counterfeit.
How many people were told the same information in the
These
company?
guys were all privy to it, but these guys were all high-placed people at NASA and the U.S. Defense Department.
Any other colleagues of your level that were aware also?
No. Everybody at my level was doing graphics, doing prototypes, and they would never believe. And what am I going to do? I'm going to tell them? Well, then they're going to tell them. So I was really alone in this situation. And I did more and more research, and then every time I came up to where to prove an equation, it was supported by an event that was created through mass media caused by NASA. Be it the moon landing, be it this, and then it was the moon rocks, and then Van Brouwer going to Antarctica to pick up rocks like 2 years before the first moon mission. Then the rocks just looked like, and then it came out a couple of years ago that John Glenn, when he went on this world tour to sort of like do a PR campaign, hey, we went to the moon, and he gave rocks to the Queen of England, and she gave those rocks to the museum in Amsterdam, and up until a couple of years ago, they found out that was just petrified wood. It wasn't a rock from the moon at all. So, I mean, like, everything's starting to come out now, but it's said once in the newspaper, almost like it's a revelation of the method, a he on everybody. But...
And how did you deal with having the information in your head and continuing to work on the projects you were hired for?
Well, after a while, extensions changed, numbers were dead, and I was not acknowledged. I didn't get through. I mean, even people I worked with, the agency said that they never even worked for them. So the whole thing looks like it's just like, so I look crazy. You know what I mean? Like, I'm telling you, like, the guys I work with, when I call back, you know, didn't, like, the agency saying they never worked for them, which I pretty much imagine is what they're saying right now, or what they were going to say about me was the same thing. I mean, go ahead, call them up, ask if Matt Boylan, the comedian, ever drew paintings for NASA.
This is former NASA official confession. I'll show you my Gmail inbox here, and you can see where this came from. Now, he says he's used some aliases here to cover his tracks, so it makes it a little more difficult for them to directly punish him. This is a former NASA official's confession. To whom it may concern. My name is Dr. Keith Smith. I am a former chief engineer with NASA. I write this message to you at great risk to my personal safety, as well as that of my family. However, after viewing your channel and videos, I believe that you may be able to help me. I'm trying to get my story out to as many truth seekers like yourself as possible. There are terrible things going on right now that the people need to know about. You are a brave person for being willing to speak out against the evil powers that be. Below is the story of how I became a part of the conspiracy to blind the masses to the true nature of reality. I joined NASA in 1996 after earning my doctorate's degree from the University of Michigan. I genuinely believed that the work that I was doing on the shuttle program was putting men in space. As a low-level engineer, I was still indoctrinated with the lie of the Earth's shape. In 2012, I was promoted to chief engineer. In this position, I was tasked with overseeing the engineers and designers of various projects and future missions in the space program. At least, this is what I thought I would be doing. It was only later that I found out that I received this promotion because my superiors felt that I could be trusted with the secret. On June 7, 2012, I was approached directly by the acting administrator of NASA, Charles Bolden. When he offered me the promotion, I readily accepted. It was at this point that I had to be let in on the secret. On June 10, I went to Washington, D.C. to meet with Administrator Bolden. The pretense of the meeting was as a way of meeting the other heads of NASA and as an introduction to my new position. When I went into the meeting room at NASA headquarters in Washington, D.C., they sat me down and went through introductions. The meeting consisted of myself, Administrator Bolden, Deputy Administrator Lori Garver, Associate Administrator Robert Lightfoot, Director Michael Coates of Johnson Space Center, Director Robert Cabana of Kennedy Space Center, Director Arthur Goldman of Marshall Space Center, and Chief Scientist Walid Abdelhadi. After the niceties had concluded, Bolden became very serious. He told me that what I was about to hear was going to change my entire life, and that I may struggle to believe it at first. His only request was that I hear him out. From here, he revealed the secret to me. I will never forget the moment Administrator Bolden looked me in the eyes and said, "Everything that you have ever been taught is a lie." From here, he told me that the Earth was in fact flat. This is something that had been known for thousands of years by the ancient peoples. However, as the general population became more educated and their social status increased, they became restless and a danger to themselves. It became necessary for a great lie in order to prevent a collapse of society and another dark age. You see, historians will tell you that humans have known that the Earth was round for thousands of years. They will point to the likes of Eratosthenes, or Eratosthenes, saying that he knew the Earth was a globe in the 3rd century BC. They will even say that he calculated the circumference of the globe to within 1% accuracy by having Bemetists measure the distance between Alexandria and Syene, by walking the distance and counting steps. However, these historical records have been fabricated and left for the historians and archaeologists to discover. It was only 200 years ago that the true nature of the Earth was general knowledge. However, all records of this knowledge have been destroyed. I was also told that NASA's true purpose was not space exploration, but maintaining the globe conspiracy and maintaining the integrity of civilization. When Administrator Bolden had finished, I was left in utter shock at what I had heard. Surely this could not be true. It must be some form of trick or joke. In fact, when Bolden finished, I just laughed at him. However, Bolden maintained his composure. He told me that he too reacted the same way when he heard the truth. Others in the room went about recounting their stories of first hearing the truth. In fact, Director Goldman said that it took him months to be fully convinced. I was told to go back to my hotel and think it over. At first, I was in denial of the truth. It took weeks before I fully accepted what I should have always known. The other senior NASA officials were very supportive of me throughout the process, being patient with my many questions. As chief engineer, my main job was coming up with plausible designs to then pass down to lower-level engineers. They would then properly design and even build the spacecraft. They never knew that what they were designing would never go to space. It was my job to ensure that. Whenever we launched a rocket, it would just fly out of range of the TV cameras and civilian tracking capabilities before ditching into the ocean. Many rockets can even still be found at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. I went along with spreading the lie for 7 years until I retired at the end of 2019. Even after I retired, I was still fully on board with spreading the lie of the globe. I was indoctrinated to a fanatical degree that lying about the Earth's true form was the only way to preserve society. However, with the COVID pandemic, I had a religious awakening and found God for the first time in my life. Through this, I realized the error of my ways. The people have a right to know the truth. It may cause a social upheaval, but I think that it is worth it to break the authority of the conspiracy. As a part of the conspiracy, my every move is closely watched. They have been growing suspicious of me. I am using false aliases as a way of defending my identity and delaying them from silencing me. I strongly believe that it is important that the truth is spread to as many people as possible. They will do everything they can to suppress your message. It is no accident that YouTube and similar platforms are cracking down on conspiracy videos. I hope you find this information helpful. Please feel free to reach out with any questions that you may have. I will try my best to be responsive for as long as possible. Thank you, Dr. Keith Smith. I think some of his points here are interesting, particularly with regards to Eratosthenes and the circumference and the Bemetists, and this point where he says that, however, all records of this knowledge have been destroyed. It's true. When we go back, we actually have noticed even since Flat Earth began that, or since this awakening and this movement has begun, that as we say things and point them out to people, they'll literally go and change it just after we point it out. Or they'll add information to it to try to change what people think about it. And they also remove a lot of documents that we point out. Having said that, there are certain documents that are maintained that they have to keep there because other people have already noticed them that have information that proves that the Earth is flat. So
after we hear all of these people that used to work for NASA and were former employees for Lockheed Martin and had a history of doing many different things at NASA, coming out and speaking the truth of what's really going on at NASA and what's being compartmentalized and how the whole infrastructure of the deception works, the pieces of the puzzle, they kind of start to come together. Like you start to realize why they're faking these moon landings, because they can't go to the moon, and why they're faking all of this ISS footage, because they literally can't put somebody on a spacecraft that's orbiting 17,000 miles per hour around a fake spinning ball. The physics do not work. And there's no spacecraft that can actually go through the Van Allen belts. They say that themselves. And when you look into it even more, you realize that the Van Allen belts are the firmament. They're giving you the truth in plain sight. They're telling you that they can't go to space. And it just kind of all starts to make sense. It becomes very obvious once you start to look at the deception from the bigger picture. And you realize that, the inception of NASA came at a time when, there wasn't really a lot of, there wasn't a lot of history with space travel. It wasn't really known. It just kind of came up out of nowhere. And, years, decades before, they were still teaching flat Earth in school. And there's plenty of videos to document that. There's news articles. There's people that are in their 90s and 100s that were taught flat Earth in school. And then, decades later in the 40s and 50s, and that's when they started pushing the globe propaganda, and they started pushing this fake space travel, and saying we're going to go back to the moon and we're going to go to Mars. And, we haven't been to the moon since 1972. And we still can't go to the moon today. They say that they lost all the technology, and somehow we've reversed and we've gone backwards with technology. We haven't advanced with technology and space travel, 50, 60, 70 years later. We still can't go to the moon, and it just doesn't make sense. So, it becomes very obvious that they never planned for this digital age, of the internet and the information age, to catch up with this technology where we can see past all of the BS and all of the fakery, and we can spot all of the nonsense pretty easily. And they never, expected that to happen. And now they're kind of caught in their own lie. And they're panicking, and they're trying to figure out how to cover up this massive lie that is NASA and space travel and space exploration. They're trying to cover it up, and they're trying to, come up with another narrative. And they hide all this, a lot of this fakery in plain sight. And we've caught them doing it. And, with that, I'm going to leave you with this clip called the Newsbenders, which is from 1968, which was a year before the moon landing in 1969. That kind of shows all of the fakery in plain sight and shows that the world truly is all a stage.
Today, April 14th, 1973. First historic pictures by Radstar of the combined U.S.-Russian landing on the moon. Shown here are Majors Webb and Mikhailovich taking their first steps into the unknown, firing their retro rockets to land their spacecraft on the dust-covered surface. A comforting note for us stay-at-homes: both the Pentagon and the Kremlin have announced that the moon has no strategic value.
A comforting note for us stay-at-home. I can't show you any film on this next model. We haven't photographed it yet. But this is the way it will sound.
June the 22nd, 1973. The State Department releases film of the ultimate weapon, codenamed Icarus. This satellite is equipped with a solid reactor. In layman's terms, it can freeze air solid, stopping all missiles, killing all forms of life. Icarus orbits at the same speed as the Earth, can hang in position over every major city that threatens the peace-loving nations.
Rather proud of this one. Come on. Please, sit down, Mr. Lutton.
September the 5th, 1973. The new phase in global warfare. War by example. At 4:32 our time, China took out the remote Indian border village of Bandar, unprotected by the Icarus network. After the first 2 5-megaton H-bombs had fallen, the 9-way hotline finally...
Switch it off.
But
this is going to happen in 1973. You're going to make this happen?
No. We're going to make models, much cheaper. Then we photograph the models.
Fake newsreels?
Fake newsreels. For the past 10 years, people have been looking at our fake newsreels and listening to our fake commentaries.
And they accept it for the truth. And you can do it. Stop 100 people in the street. How many of them have actually seen a missile or a satellite? They're just told they exist and they believe it.
Yes, you're getting there. I knew you would.
Well, now the moon rocket and the satellite, that you can get away with. That's too remote for people to grasp. It's too far away. But this... I mean, you invented this village on the Indo-Chinese border.
Oh, yes.
Well, somebody could check up.
Very mountainous territory up there. There'll be no survivors in 1973. No rescue work. Radiation scare.
Yes. You can do it. This could be the news for 1973.
Not necessarily exactly like this. We only plan in detail 1 year ahead.
Oh, you only plan 1 year ahead.
Hey, tell me, what is the news item that's bothered you the most in the past year, 1967?
Oh, well, it has to be the new American intercontinental ballistic missile, the Boy Wonder, doesn't it?
Just the one I asked him to set up for you. The new ICBM, codename Boy Wonder, with a much-talked-about Mercury warhead. I haven't any special effects up here, but perhaps with the proper sound. Blast off. And Robert Larkin, television director, high IQ, 35 years old, is scared. Scared by nothing. It doesn't work. It's a scientific impossibility. The same goes for the much-talked-about Mercury warhead. Perspex.
Well, if this rocket doesn't work, then the others...
They have a fireworks party at Cape Kennedy almost every other day. Well, you didn't really believe there were all these things whizzing about up there, did you? Sputniks and rockets. Astronauts crossing their legs for 8 days.
How long has this been going on?
Since Hiroshima.
And the H-bomb, you mean... that doesn't work either?
Right. Dirty.
Very, very dirty.
What was your first reaction? Relief. Oh, yes. Yes, it has to be relief.